And we are again rolling at UCLA on March 3rd, where it's a beautiful day in Los Angeles. The sunshine is shining. And we're about to hear a debate on the question, should we keep the mentally ill from guns? Should we keep the mentally ill? This House would keep the mentally ill from guns. This House would keep the mentally ill from guns. On the affirmative, Jason. On the negative, opposition, Chloe. And we're on.
Hi, my name is Jason.
Hi, Jason.
So today I want to talk to you about why I believe the mentally ill should be kept away from guns, okay? The following proposition is to be presented as a policy case in the affirmative. So first of all, what is the mentally ill? Let's talk about the mentally ill. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the mentally ill consists of those suffering from mental illnesses, which may impact a person's thinking, feeling, or mood, as well as their ability to relate to others and function on a day-to-day basis. So let's start with what is the problem? Well, there's a couple of problems that I'm going to get to right now. Several mass shootings in the United States have been attributed to individuals suffering from mental illnesses. Let's talk about two of these mass shooters. First, Jared Loughner. In January of 2011, Jared Loughner shot and killed 6 individuals in a Safeway parking lot, with many others getting injured. One of those injured individuals was U.S. Representative Gabrielle Giffords, who suffered a gunshot wound to the head. Loughner was later diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia after the shooting and deemed incompetent to stand trial. Now let's talk about Adam Lanza. In December of 2012, Adam Lanza shot and killed 26 individuals at a Sandy Hook elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut. Mr. Lanza's medical history indicated he was suffering from anxiety and obsessive-compulsive disorder, otherwise known as OCD. In fact, it was determined that his undiagnosed anorexia may have affected his mental state in the first place. His mental illnesses were left untreated, and as a result, it led to this massacre, with 20 of those victims being children aged between 6 and 7 years old. Another problem is that the issue of mental illness is not very well understood by many, including law enforcement officials. According to an article in the Huffington Post in 2013 written by Gerald Langsberg, police are not well trained when it comes to being mental health crisis providers. Let's talk about one situation. In New York City, an incident occurred where a woman called police about a family member that seemed to be emotionally disturbed. But when the police got there, they did not know how to handle the situation, which led to the man getting tased, falling to the ground from the fire escape, and died. As a result, the police officer even himself committed suicide a couple weeks later. This is from an article written in 2013. In another case of neglect, Virginia Tech student Song Hai Cho was ordered by a court to seek mental health care in 2007 after he began behaving irrationally. Unfortunately, that order never went through, and he ended up shooting and killing himself along with 32 others. Croft, 2013. Members of the U.S. government have also prevented research on mental health from moving forward in the first place. One of these members of Congress, Jay Dickey, helped pass a restriction to cut funding for gun violence research in 1996. Today he regrets making this decision after seeing the number of mass shootings that have taken place in the U.S. over the years, according to an article written by Stein in 2015. Lastly, there are many mental illnesses that can affect an individual's perception of reality. Adam Lanza himself was diagnosed with anorexia after his death, and it was only later determined that this could lead to cognitive impairment. So how big is this problem? Well, according to an article published by Dave Johnson and Alexander Ho in 2015, 55,887 guns have been sold to individuals with criminal records and mental illnesses in the U.S. between 1998 and 2014. Also, according to the Central Florida Intelligence Exchange, 79% of the mass shootings that have taken place in the United States since 2011 have been attributed to individuals with symptoms of mental illnesses. Now, why do we have this problem in the first place? Well, mental health records are vastly underreported. To begin, the FBI's National Instant Criminal Background Check is not exactly enforced, according to an article written by Parley Piano in 2016. Many states are not reporting this important information about individuals prohibited from possessing firearms. And it's this underreporting that led to individuals such as Dylan Roof being able to obtain a weapon after passing a background check, which should have failed due to the fact that he had admitted to possessing illegal drugs. Another problem, the reason why we have this problem, is due to a default proceed. which has resulted in many individuals suffering from mental health illnesses to still be able to obtain firearms. See, when you attempt to buy a gun, individuals are subjected to a criminal background check by the NICS. However, if 3 days pass and there's no verdict, the licensed dealer is allowed to sell those guns. In fact, according to data from the FBI in a report published by Johnson & Ho in 2015, 202 million background checks have been ran, but only 9% of them have been delayed by the sale of a gun. Another problem is that many loopholes have made it easier for individuals suffering from mental illnesses to obtain a gun. According to an article written by Michael Sagnato in 2015, if an individual voluntarily commits himself to a mental health institution, this record is not shown in a national database. The gun show loophole has also allowed individuals to avoid background checks through private sales. In this gun show loophole, an individual can bypass a background check and purchase a gun from a private seller. As a result, there's no way to determine whether this individual has a history of mental illness or not. Lastly, one more reason why we have this problem is that a lot of individuals suffering from mental illnesses are unable to receive the treatment they need. A report by medical experts at Yale University, according to an article published by Comm in 2014, showed that Adam Lanza was completely untreated in the years before the Sandy Hook massacre took place. His own mother refused to give his son medication upon recommendation by Yale University's Child Study Center when he was in the 9th grade. So, what is the solution? I believe that more restrictions should be implemented when running background checks on individuals that would like to purchase a gun. Under a new rule by the White House, only the fact that an individual is prohibited from purchasing firearms is available on the NICS, as I explained earlier. Both the individual's health records and diagnosis are not accessible on this database. We must also require schools to monitor children for potential mental illnesses. And if a mental illness is diagnosed, it is the school's responsibility to inform the child's parents and recommend treatment. Now, also, more money should be spent on research towards mental illnesses and the links they have to mass shootings. There's a lack of scientific studies detailing the connection between mental illness and mass shootings due to this act, as I discussed earlier, passed in 1996 to restrict research. And we must also fix the loopholes in gun control laws which can allow the mentally ill to purchase weapons. The Obama administration, in fact, is currently working to remove the loopholes, according to an article by Lopez in 2016. So will this solution work?
How?
Yes. By implementing more restrictions on firearms purchases for the mentally ill, the lives of many individuals will be protected. An example of how beneficial these background checks can be seen in Canada. Canada's background checks for firearms purchases focus heavily on mental histories, and as a result, the number of deaths from gun violence has decreased there. So what are the advantages to my proposal? The lives of many individuals will be saved if tougher restrictions are placed for the mentally ill.
That's time.
As stated earlier, 79% of those mass shootings taking place in the United States since 2011 were committed by individuals suffering from mental illnesses in the first place. So on balances, as you can see, by preventing the mentally ill from obtaining firearms, this will ensure the safety of many individuals. If mental illness is diagnosed early, this will show up on background checks and ensure the safety of individuals in society. Thank you.
I now
I now
stand.
stand open for cross-exam.
Thank you. Cross-examination, please, from the Leader of the Opposition. Stand close together. Close together. Closer. Yeah, good. Thank you. Okay.
Hi, I'm Chloe.
Hi, Chloe.
Okay, so Newtown shooter Adam Lanza's mental illnesses were left untreated, so you say, and as a result, that resulted in the massacre. So what you're saying then is that this wouldn't have happened had he been having treatment for his diagnosed mental illnesses, right?
What I'm saying is that if he was diagnosed earlier, he could have had treatment, and as a result, he wouldn't have gone on a rampage and shot those school children in that school.
Right. So he did have diagnosed mental illnesses, and so your point was that they were untreated, and that result. Well, those were your words, that they were untreated.
Well,
and
yeah.
As a result, that led to the massacre.
Yeah.
So how does it follow then that the mentally ill should not be allowed to own guns? Like his mental illnesses were diagnosed,
Well,
but
see,
if they were
yeah.
being treated.
But see, his mental illness, even though it was diagnosed, it doesn't mean that he got a treatment for it, you know? If you just say what the problem is, it's not like actually solving the problem itself. You need to solve the problem. So it was his mother's responsibility and the school's responsibility to give him the treatment he needed to prevent the massacre from taking place in the first place.
So you agree then that had he been undergoing treatment at the time, you should have been allowed access to the guns?
Well, even though, let's say he did undergo treatment, okay? If he did undergo treatment, this would have actually even showed up in databases, so it would have prevented him from being able to obtain a weapon.
Currently, those with diagnosed mental illnesses, for example, obsessive compulsive disorder, are not prohibited from owning guns, though. So it actually would
But it wasn't
just
until
from being in
One left.
it wasn't until after the shooting that they also found out that his anorexia could have actually affected his mental state. So the fact, if that was determined earlier and treated for earlier, this may not have happened in the first place.
Okay. So you've also said that those who voluntarily check themselves into a mental institution should be banned from owning guns in the future.
Yes.
So if someone's suicidal during a period of depression, you believe that they should be stripped of their Second Amendment rights?
Yes, I believe that, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're automatically treated. There's still a risk. They're actually voluntarily committing themselves. They recognize their risk. They're trying to get treated. So this doesn't mean that they still should be allowed to own a weapon, which they could, go out and, such as shooters like Adam Lanza, like go around and killing people, They're still going to pose a risk. We don't know. So taking away this one small freedom will ensure the safety of many other individuals.
Okay, that's time. Okay, the chair will now recognize the leader of the opposition for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length. Okay, begin.
Hi, I'm Chloe.
Hi, Chloe.
Hi, this House would keep the mentally ill from guns. This proposition is to be presented in a path as a positive and a negative. We have a serious problem with gun violence in the United States. According to a 2003 study published in The Economist last year, active shooter incidents or mass shootings are on the rise. In Chicago, gun violence has reached crisis levels. Last year, over the 3-day 4th of July weekend, the Chicago Police Department confiscated one illegal gun per hour on average over that weekend, as reported in The Economist. Now, people are erroneously zeroing in on mental health as a blanket cause of the raging gun violence that we're experiencing. But, so according to a 2013 Gallup poll, the mental health system is the perceived top, and I say perceived, top cause of mass shootings. So people want to find a solution that can be easily addressed, ideally with policy change. But the fact of the matter is, it's not that simple. 2002 World Health Organization report lays it out succinctly. They say no single factor explains why some individuals behave violently toward others, or why violence is more prevalent in some communities than others. Violence is the result of the complex interplay of individual, relationship, social, cultural, environmental factors. Understanding how these factors are related to violence is one of the important steps in the public health approach to addressing them and preventing them. So, in focusing so heavily on mental illness, which is inarguably one cause or one catalyst for gun violence, other, even more crucial root causes are being swept aside. Why do we have a problem? In too many neighborhoods, it's easier to buy a gun than fresh fruits or a book, according to President Obama in a speech he made in Chicago last year. The ease of attaining guns in many states means that guns too often wind up in the hands of those who would otherwise be prevented from carrying them due to any number of reasons, including mental illness, but also including a history of violence and criminal histories. The current rules on background checks apply only to licensed gun dealers, but up to 40% of gun sales actually take place over the internet, at gun fairs, and those checks are not required in those circumstances. Further, the social stigma attached to the blanket term mentally ill carries fears and anxieties, which translates to overzealous calls to limit the freedoms of those who fall within that category for the sake of public safety. Now, even if we were successful in banning all people with documented mental illnesses from owning guns, that would not even come close to fixing the problem. The 2001 study by Dr. Malloy at UCSD looked at 34 adolescent mass murderers, all male. 70% were described as loner, 61.5% had problems with substance abuse, 48% had preoccupations with weapons, 43.5% have been victims of bullying, and only 23% had a documented psychiatric history of any kind. That means that means 3 out of 4 did not. So what's the solution? Instead of focusing on the mentally ill, we need to focus on those with a history of violence and drug abuse. Funding for drug prevention and treatment programs should be increased. Background checks should be required for all gun sales, including those that take place online and at gun fairs. And such background checks should incorporate comprehensive criteria, which would deem those high-risk populations worthy of exclusion or closer scrutiny. Will the solution work? Absolutely. According to a 2015 article in The Economist, studies show that the rates of murder and suicide are lower in states with stricter gun control laws. These rates would be even lower if neighboring states adopted more strict laws as well. Illinois, for instance, borders Wisconsin and Indiana, which are 2 states with few gun restrictions. In Chicago, which has especially restrictive gun laws, more than half of the guns confiscated from police come from out of state. A 2002 study that found that just under 3% of people suffering from severe mental illness had acted violently in the last year, compared to just under 1% of the general population. However, those who abused alcohol or drugs were at an elevated 10% risk. This was reported in the New Yorker in 2014. So more rigorous drug treatment and prevention programs would therefore be a better predictor of successfully lowering the incidence of gun violence, more so than mental health care initiatives. Now, banning the mentally ill from gun ownership is a slippery slope, leading to more dangerous restrictions on personal freedoms. After the Newtown shooting, NRA President Wayne LaPierre blamed delusional killers for violence in the United States and called for a national registry of persons with mental illnesses. This kind of thinking is hugely problematic, as our conceptions of what constitutes a mental illness are constantly changing. Someone who's considered to be mentally ill at one point may be given a clean bill of health at some later date. For example, homosexuality was considered to be a mental illness and was not removed from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM, until 1973.
What?
Furthermore, this opens the door for outright abuse, as political manipulation of the psychiatric practices have already historically been happening. For example, the Soviet Union abused psychiatry to make anti-Soviet agitation a mental illness, and then exploited this diagnosis so they could remove and lock away dissenting activists, anti-Soviet activists. Now, these errors and abuses will be avoided if we focus on violence and drug abuse as predictors instead of mental illness. Now, according to Dr. Jeffrey Swanson at Duke University...
You want to read the disadvantages, go to your on balance now.
Okay. All right. I think it's okay.
No, because they're disadvantages to your proposal, or are they disadvantages to his?
Disadvantages to mine.
To yours? Yeah, well, that would be negative against yourself, so
Just
don't...
skip it?
Skip it, yeah.
Well, I refute it in my...
Okay, well, just go into your on balance, because you're down to 15 seconds.
Okay. Mental illness is not the root cause of gun violence. Past violence remains the single biggest predictor of future violence. Preoccupation with mental illness is not only dangerous and stigmatizing for those who fall into the category, it distracts from our being able to isolate and address the real causes, which will allow us to reverse the trend of gun violence and get the situation under control once and for all.
That's time.
Therefore, for all these reasons, I believe that there should be no ban on gun ownership on the basis of mental illness. Thank you.
Thank you. Stand open for
I now
cross-examination.
stand open for cross-examination
Okay, points of clarification.
and points of clarification.
Here we go.
Okay, hi, I'm Jason.
Hi, Jason.
So, I have a question for you. I liked your speech a lot. It was very great, very informative. But I have a couple of questions I'd like to touch upon. So, how is it safe to assume that those that suffer from a history of violence or drug abuse are not mentally ill as well? I mean, after all, part of the difficulty in preventing the mentally ill from obtaining firearms is that the term mentally ill is way too broad of a category and can arise due to both violence and drug abuse. So how do we know that violence and drug abuse aren't correlated with mental illness?
We don't. Yeah, mental illness is absolutely correlated with drug abuse.
So doesn't that mean that, you know, the people that are going to obtain a gun, shouldn't more of a focus be on mental illness as well?
No, but because, like you just said, that's too broad of a term. Mental illness incorporates more than just those who are in the high-risk populations, which are people who have exhibited violence in the past and drug abusers.
Okay, and also you brought up another point where you said mental illness is not the root cause of gun violence. But if that's not the case, then how can we explain all these recent mass shootings that have occurred? As I discussed, 79% of the shootings since 2011 were due to someone suffering from a mental illness. So how do we say that mental illness is not like the root cause of gun violence?
Well, actually, according to the World Health Organization, it's not. It's an amalgamation of social, personal, relationship, cultural factors, in addition to mental health, and your study is not comprehensive enough to draw that kind of conclusion.
Okay, and shouldn't
One left.
you also say that even though you said homosexuality was viewed as a mental illness in the past, okay, but does that mean there have been correlations between being homosexual and mass shootings? Because most of the mental illnesses that I've seen, you know, anxiety, OCD, schizophrenia, those were the cause of the mass shootings. I haven't seen any facts of being homosexual attributed to mass shootings.
Absolutely not. No, my point was actually that because our concept of mental illness is like changing and it's subject to sort of like the social whims of the time and the political whims of the time, it's dangerous to limit someone's personal freedoms on the basis of a diagnosis of mentally ill.
Okay,
Because even
that's time. Time for rebuttals now.
Okay, so my opponent Chloe says that preventing the mentally ill from obtaining guns is not the right way to decrease gun violence. Instead, there should be more of a focus on the other reasons for the increase in gun violence, such as drug abuse. My opponent also claims that mental illnesses have been exploited, as she presented with her case of the Soviet Union. Also, my opponent claims that drug treatment programs would provide more of a benefit towards decreasing gun violence in mental health care facilities. I happen to disagree with my opponent based on many facts, such as how several mass shootings that have taken place in the U.S. in recent years have for the most part been attributed to mental illness, as well as a failure for background checks to prevent these mentally ill people from obtaining firearms. As I discussed in my case of John Hauser, who was able to purchase these firearms, background checks were unable to bring up information regarding the fact that a judge had ordered him to be psychologically evaluated. Had this information been available during the background check, those two individuals whose lives he took away would be here standing today. This is proof that a lack of focus on the topic of mental health has crippled our society. A better understanding of mental health could have even prevented the Newtown massacre, which resulted in a total of 28 lives being lost. If greater attention was paid to Adam Lanza's mental health history, he might have been able to receive the treatment he needed. As I mentioned earlier, 79% of the mass shootings that have occurred in the U.S. since 2011 have been attributed to mental illness. This calls for harsher restrictions for gun purchases by the mentally ill. It is important to note that we are not necessarily taking away all of their freedoms. This is necessary in order to ensure the safety of the public. I disagree with my opponent claiming that gun violence, for the most part, is attributed to violent drug abuse rather than mental illnesses. It's important to note that these factors may be what causes the mental illnesses in the first place, and therefore a solution must be found in order to decrease the risk associated with the mentally ill being able to obtain firearms. I would also like to add that my opponent's example of homosexuality should not be applied in this case. While homosexuality may have been viewed as a mental illness in the past, there's no evidence to support the correlation between homosexuality and committing a massacre. On the other hand, we see how Adam Lanza's lack of treatment for his mental illnesses led to him committing his horrific act. Therefore, based on the evidence and support I have given, I believe that the mentally ill need to be kept away from guns not only for their own sake, but for the sake of other individuals as well.
Thank you very much. We'll now hear from the leader of the opposition for her closing remarks, hopefully engaging in four-step refutation. He said, I disagree because, therefore. Rock and roll.
All right. So, my opponent says that under-reporting practices led to Dylan Roof being able to obtain a weapon after he passed a background check, which should have failed due to the fact that he had admitted to possessing illegal drugs in the past. I disagree that this has any bearing on his argument because drugs are the factor here, not some other type of mental illness. I agree that there was gross neglect in this case due to the underreporting, but the risk factor in the that the background check should have detected is the illegal drug use, not mental illness. Therefore, the argument against banning on the basis of mental illness still holds.
Good.
He also says that when attempting to buy a gun, individuals are subjected to a criminal background check by the NICS. However, if 3 days pass, there's no verdict by the FBI, the licensed dealer is still allowed to sell the gun. I disagree that this has any bearing on the argument for the same reason. Criminal history is the factor here, not the mental illness. We're in agreement that there should be more strict background checks, but the history of violence is the operative factor here. Therefore, the argument against banning on the basis of mental illness holds. He also says in the gun show loophole, an individual can bypass a background check by purchasing a gun from a private seller. As a result, there's no way to determine whether the individual has history of mental illness as well as criminal record. And I disagree that this necessitates banning the mentally ill from guns, because as shown from the study by Dr. Swanson at Duke University, criminal record and history of violence is the important issue here that could be diverted if gun shows were subject to the same regulations. Therefore, they should be subject to those same regulations, and they should not ban the mentally ill from owning guns.
One.
He also says that 79% of the mass shootings that have taken place in the United States since 2011 were committed by individuals suffering from mental illnesses by making it. So I disagree because the study that he cited only included 14 mass shootings between 2011 and 2013, and this can hardly be considered a comprehensive or all-inclusive list. Therefore, further study is required before one could conclusively make such a statement. And furthermore, he says background checks in the UK review an individual's criminal record, mental illness, drug addiction, references regarding mental state, and more. The gun licenses may be revoked as well if police find that the individual's gun ownership of firearms poses a threat to public safety. I disagree that this means that we need to ban the mentally ill from gun ownership because the criminal record and drug addiction, in addition to the mental illness, create a comprehensive picture of each applicant that allows us to assess that risk. Therefore, we actually need a more comprehensive and thorough background check program. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you cross the house and show your sportsmanship by shaking hands and complimenting the other side? Could you please quickly fill out your ballot since we're very short of time?
What time is it?
What?
What time is it?
It's time to fill out the ballot and go. We will just have time to announce the results, ladies and gentlemen. So quickly. Okay, it's time to pass your ballots in. Thank you so much. you. No signature, no decision. Great. Who would that be? Someone recognize their own writing? Someone not fill out that decision? Want to admit it? Who is Robin Wells? No decision. No. Who is Jason? Who wrote this on the back? Thank you. Yes, it is annoying. On an 8 to 5. On an 8 to 5 decision, the ballots go to the government, favoring keeping guns from the mentally ill. We need to do this very quickly. One sentence. What'd you like? Real quick comment.
Hi, I'm Robin Wells. And
Hi, Robin.
I chose Jason, although Chloe was excellent and she had a lot of information. I just disagree about drugs being the cause because I believe that mental illness is the reason people probably use drugs to mask it. So that's
Okay. Self-medication.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey.
Hi,
I chose
Jeffrey.
Jason because his evidence was more solid. He was citing more than Chloe, so that's why I chose him.
My name is Johnny. I chose Jason.
Hi, Johnny.
He provide a lot of example about like the mental illness people kill the others. I think for Chloe, I think it's better to focus on how to deal with mental illness people, like just to avoid like they kill people and provide some program for treatment stuff like that.
Okay. Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Sam. I voted for the opposition. The reason why I voted for the opposition is, one reason is I thought Jason's argument was sort of narrow in a good sense, but the solutions were broad, and I sort of couldn't really understand what to make of it.
Okay, so you had a problem with the vagueness of the solution. Okay, good. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Angela. I
Hi,
voted
Angela.
for Jason. Both were extremely good debates, so it was really tough for me to choose. Both were extremely substantial, so it actually came down to who was stronger spoken versus soft spoken, so I chose Jason.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Matt.
Hi, Matt.
I chose the opposition for the exact opposite reason for her, meaning that I really liked the way that Chloe spoke. It was very calm, it was easy to follow along with, and it was very assertive at the same time.
Yeah. Didn't have to yell her points. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Raymond.
Hi, Raymond.
This was a case of policy, and I gave it to the negation because I felt her plan had the better solvency for how to reduce mass shootings instead of just having one blanket term encompassing all mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Dominic. I voted on the affirmative side only because I felt the sources seemed more credible, and I thought that he was a stronger speaker and seemed more effective.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Akash.
Hi,
I
Sai.
also voted for the affirmative side. Yes, he cited a lot of statistics, which was good. And then also she's very soft-spoken, so she was very monotone in the way couldn't really where's that spark that I was looking for. So he was overall a better speaker as well.
Okay, good. Thank you. Hi, Jorge.
I chose Chloe because, one of the biggest reasons was that Jason, when he cited his sources, he only said names, not like where this is from or who they are or why we should believe them. So that really threw away like the credibility aspect of his arguments. And then
He did have dates, but he did only cited names. But yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the names. He did say dates. The other thing is that when his argument about homosexuality, I really think he misunderstood what Chloe was saying.
Yes, he did.
So that was very, very relevant. So that really detracted from, I don't know, the strength of his argument.
His credibility, yeah. Okay, good. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Brian. I went with the
Hi, Brian.
I thought both cases were really good, but Jason just had a more explosive speaking style. It was just a lot more stronger and effective, but I like both cases a lot.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Aryan.
Hi, Arian.
I would have voted for the affirmative. I like both speeches a lot. I thought Jason's speech was a lot more structured in that I really wanted him to define mental illness, and that was the first thing that he did, so that kind of caught my attention.
Good. Please.
Hi, I'm Josh. I voted for the opposition. Yeah, I actually voted opposite for the sense that like you have a soft voice, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have a small voice. I like the points you made out. I like the way you pointed out mentally ill is a broad term. Maybe, and I like how you would have maybe gone towards like keep the anxiety or keep the depressing away, or keep like insert name here away from guns, not just the whole term as broad scope.
Yeah, he had a very broad definition of mentally ill.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth.
I voted for the affirmative, and the main reason being is that I liked his CX question, which basically asked how do we distinguish mentally ill from people with past experiences with violence, drug abuses, etc. And so I feel like in order for you to have an effective solution, it has to be mutually exclusive, which wasn't achieved. And then, yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, it was kind of a wanting in that explanation. We've heard from Robin. Let me say just one. I dropped something? What are you reaching for? Your score sheet? You put the wrong name? Let me say something about this debate. This was a tough debate for the negative, for the opposition to argue, and I want to compliment Chloe on coming up with some credible arguments that on their face are very hard to get across to people, because of course we want to keep guns from crazy people, right? And yet you point out that there's some very problematic things that come into being when we start defining people as crazy, as we saw in the Soviet Union and elsewhere. So that was good. The other thing I want you to notice when you watch this tonight, and I hope you will, is Chloe did a really good job of refutation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Finally, somebody. And contrast that with how Jason, you misunderstood the refutation. You listed every one of Chloe's points and then tried to refute them. You do it one point at a time the way Chloe did it. Okay? And that was very effective, so I like that very much. Okay, let me give you your midterm, your final, and it's, in case for those of you that arrive late, it's due finals day at 3 o'clock. And my expectations for length are about the same as the midterm. How is it?
Can I also get the sign? Is this the sign sheet?
Will the mystery guest sign in, please?
So our quarter breaks were just, or like our final break signing, we're just turning those in, correct? We're not presenting them, or we are?
No, we're just turning them. Why did you want to present yours?
And do those follow the same format as like the prison policy? Or
Yes, I explained it in the.
born nearby.
So if you want an extra week, and I can take your place next week, do you know who your partner is? You have high before
I'll send it to him. Austin.
Okay, are you?
Oh, so you're on power already.
Oh, okay, so yeah.
The argument?
Yes.
Oh, wait.
What caused you to get?
Oh, okay. Sorry, what were you saying about
Oh, his dad said he had undiagnosed schizophrenia.
Oh, anorexia too. So
And schizophrenia is a big deal.
yeah, schizophrenia. Yeah.
What I mean
I actually
is you
know
can use
someone.
the gun debates we have in class. You can use any other debates we have in class. Any of these. Everyone get it?
It's pretty serious. And we don't take it for
Yeah, 20 pages.
They recommended treatment. Oh, sorry. They recommended treatment. They didn't even follow through.
He ended up like one time he jumped out of the second story window at a house at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Your dinner.
And he was out like at a bar.
So you have everything set for this weekend?
I didn't sign in though. Could I steal it from you?
Because they see things.
As usual, very.
Alright, yeah, I got you a number saved in case for some reason I get last minute. So we're convening at the school, correct?
Yeah, it's very tough.
Yeah.
Very by Parker Street.
It is.
Park in the lot nearest the center nearest the lot.
Yeah, like, oh,
For
second
parking?
amendment, you know,
What?
take away the
You have to
rights.
pay for parking.
You know what I say? Okay, so we should like basically ban guns
If you
for
get up there
everybody,
early,
or
you
just
can go to the
maybe
hotel.
just
We
have
should
to
go to the
diagnose
hotel
it. So you're
around
telling
2
me
o'clock.
that your privacy is more important than everybody else.
What time is it here? About 8 o'clock in the morning?
It's definitely like something that's going to be argued. Like,
I want to make another point though, that because I know this is
Yeah.
5:30, you're all good.
Yeah, 5:30 right after. Thank you. Bye.
It's very, very true.
it's very true.
Thank you.
It's very painful.
It's just, yeah, that's why it's